Have you ever heard of a war that raged for over 30 years? A hidden chapter of resistance against colonial rule? This isn't a story from a fantasy novel. It's the real, untold history of the Ekumeku movement, a powerful secret society of warriors who fought to defend their homeland. Forget what you think you know about colonial history. Today, we journey back in time to the dense forests of southern Nigeria to uncover the story of one of the longest and most determined resistance efforts in African history. This is the story of the Ekumeku War. To understand the Ekumeku, we must first travel back to the late 19th century. The British Empire, driven by a thirst for resources like palm oil, was aggressively expanding its influence across West Africa. In 1891, they established the Niger Coast Protectorate, and with it came a wave of change that threatened the very fabric of life for the Igbo-speaking communities west of the Niger River, particularly the Anioma people. For centuries, these communities had governed themselves through councils of elders and age-grade systems. They had their own laws, their own economies, and their own spiritual beliefs. But the arrival of the British Royal Niger Company brought foreign traders, Christian missionaries, and a new imposed authority that disrespected their traditions and sought to control their trade. The Anioma people watched as their autonomy was eroded, their markets were monopolized, and their culture was dismissed. The simmering resentment was about to boil over. In response to this growing threat, a secret society re-emerged with renewed purpose, the Ekumeku. The name itself is powerful, loosely translating to the Silent Ones, or the League That Says Nothing. It was a decentralized, clandestine alliance of warriors drawn from numerous towns and villages. Their structure was their strength. Without a single king or centralized command, they were incredibly difficult for the British to identify and dismantle. Members were bound by sacred oaths, and their operations were shrouded in secrecy. They were masters of their environment, using the thick forests and winding paths as their greatest allies. The Ekumeku wasn't just a military force, it was a spiritual and cultural movement, a declaration that their way of life was not for sale and would be defended to the last. The first major shots of the Ekumeku War were fired in 1898. The conflict wasn't a single, continuous war, but a series of intense, brutal uprisings. The first phase began with coordinated attacks on the Royal Niger Company's trading posts and administrative centers. The town of Ibusa became a major flashpoint. Ekumeku warriors, using their deep knowledge of the terrain, launched surprise guerrilla-style raids. They would appear from the forest, strike with precision, and melt back into the landscape before the British could mount an effective response. The British soldiers, with their heavy uniforms and conventional tactics, were at a severe disadvantage in the dense jungle. They were fighting ghosts. These initial attacks sent a clear message. British encroachment would be met with fierce resistance. The Royal Niger Company, shaken and unable to contain the rebellion, was forced to cede its territory to the British government, escalating the conflict into a full-blown colonial war. The British response was swift and ruthless. They deployed experienced colonial officers like Major Galway and Major Festing, men who had fought in other parts of the empire and were known for their brutal tactics. The British military strategy was simple and devastating: collective punishment. If a village was suspected of harboring Ekumeku fighters, the entire community would suffer. British columns would march in, burn homes, destroy crops, and seize property. They implemented a scorched earth policy designed to starve the resistance and break the will of the people. They also tried to exploit local rivalries, attempting to turn different Anioma communities against each other. Despite this overwhelming force, the Ekumeku spirit refused to die. Each time the British declared victory and thought they had pacified the region, the Silent Ones would rise again, often stronger and more determined than before. One of the most remarkable aspects of the Ekumeku movement was its sophisticated organization. Information was passed through a network of secret messengers. Their tactics were far from primitive. They constructed hidden stockades and trenches deep within the forests, creating fortified camps that were difficult to assault. They were skilled in psychological warfare, using their silent, sudden appearances to instill fear and uncertainty among the colonial troops. They were also adaptable. When the British brought in Maxim guns, the Ekumeku learned to avoid open confrontations, relying instead on ambushes and night raids. Leaders emerged from various towns, figures whose names are now legendary in local oral histories, like Dunkwu of Onitsha Olona and the Council of Fighters in Ogwashi Uku. They coordinated strategies across different clans, creating a united front that constantly surprised and frustrated the seemingly invincible British Empire. The war entered its final and most intense phase around 1909. Frustrated by their inability to crush the movement, the British leadership adopted an even more systematic approach. They began building permanent military garrisons and cutting wide roads through the forests to improve troop movement and deny the Ekumeku their cover. They also implemented a system of warrants and appointed warrant chiefs, local individuals given authority by the British. This was a classic divide-and-conquer strategy, designed to create a new class of leaders loyal to the colonial administration, effectively undermining the traditional power structures that fueled the Ekumeku. This tactic, combined with relentless military pressure, slowly began to turn the tide. The final major confrontation took place in 1911 in the town of Ubulu Uku. After a fierce battle, the main Ekumeku stronghold was overwhelmed. Though the organized military resistance was largely broken by 1911, the spirit of the Ekumeku endured. The movement was forced to go underground, but it had left an indelible mark. The 34-year struggle had cost the British dearly in terms of soldiers, resources, and prestige. It demonstrated a level of coordinated and sustained resistance that was unparalleled in the region. The Ekumeku warriors had defended their land with incredible bravery for more than 3 decades against one of the world's greatest military powers. While they ultimately could not prevent the imposition of colonial rule, their legacy is one of unwavering courage and a profound love for their independence. They proved that the will of a people to be free could not be easily extinguished. So why is this incredible story not more widely known? The history of the Ekumeku War was largely written by the victors, the British. Colonial reports often downplayed the scale of the resistance, dismissing the warriors as fetish priests or unruly natives. But in the oral traditions of the Anioma people, in the songs and stories passed down through generations, the memory of the Ekumeku lives on. They are remembered not as rebels, but as patriots and defenders of their heritage. Their story is a crucial part of Nigerian and African history, a powerful reminder of the countless men and women who fought against colonialism. It challenges the simple narrative of European dominance and reveals a complex history of defiance and resilience. The legacy of the Ekumeku movement echoes into the present day. It serves as a powerful symbol of unity and resistance for the Anioma people and for all who value freedom and self-determination. It reminds us that history is filled with forgotten heroes and untold stories of courage. By remembering the Ekumeku, we honor their sacrifice and gain a deeper, more complete understanding of the struggle for independence. Their war was not just a fight for land. It was a fight for dignity, for culture, and for the right to exist on their own terms. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey into the past. If you found this story as fascinating as we did, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more hidden histories. Let us know in the comments what other forgotten stories you'd like to see us cover. Until next time, keep exploring.